The U.S. military shooting down another anti-ship missile in the Red Sea. It was fired by Iran-backed Houthis in their first attack since Washington began launching air strikes on their facilities in Yemen.
Trey Yingst live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Trey.
Todd, Carly, good morning. Over the weekend, Iran-backed Houthi rebels launched their first new attack in the Red Sea since joint coalition strikes targeted the group last week. We do understand, according to U.S. Central Command, that an American fighter jet shot down an anti-ship cruise missile that was launched toward the USS Laboon. Now, the region does remain on high alert, concerned about a broader Houthi response that could take place. Those developments in the Red Sea do come as Israel marked 100 days since the October 7th massacre, calling for the release of the remaining hostages. Thousands gathered over the weekend in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square to protest as President Biden released a statement saying, quote, "For each of those 100 days, the hostages and their families have been at the forefront of my mind as my national security team and I have worked nonstop to try to secure their freedom." As Israeli forces continue to operate on the ground inside Gaza, trying to destroy Hamas and find the hostages, the war is expected to enter a new phase shortly that could see a different, more targeted fighting and additional negotiating. The uncertainty across the Middle East does come as Israel's northern front remains active. 2 civilians were killed yesterday after an anti-tank guided missile was fired from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. Todd, Carly.
Okay, Trey Yingst live for us in Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you so much. Let's bring in Iowa Congressman Zach Nunn, who is a member of the Four-Country Caucus, which brings bipartisan veteran values to Washington, D.C. Congressman, good morning to you. No better time to talk about foreign policy than a day like today when a lot of people are going to be picking who they think the next commander-in-chief should be. But the current man who holds that position, President Biden, recently said something notable when it comes to Iran. Take a listen to what he recently said to a reporter. Watch this. So a little difficult to hear that there, but he said in the face of Houthi attacks, he delivered a message privately to Iran. We are confident and well prepared. What do you think that private message was?
Well, Carl, if it's anything like what we've seen, it's a lot of bluster but no action. Look, during the Biden administration, we've seen Iran receive over $80 billion in illicit oil sales, and it's gone up over 400%. I've been leading the charge on the House Financial Services Committee to hold Iran accountable so that it stops these second-tier terrorist groups like Hamas, like the Houthis, from receiving money directly from the Iran Revolutionary Guards Corps, which really funds their operation, including those high-end missile systems and radars that were struck by U.S. and British forces. It's very important that not only do we respond with force here, but that we enforce the sanctions that we already have. In fact, we've got people right here in the United States who are funding the insurance programs for this ghost fleet of Iranian oil tankers going out that the Biden administration could stop today. But if we're not going to address the root of the problem, Iran financing these terrorist groups, we're going to continue to see strikes on U.S. interests in the Gulf of Aden, where I've flown combat operations, as well as in Israel, in Gaza, in West Bank, and certainly in Lebanon as a direct result of a failure of leadership action to crack down. And as you're pointing out, hundreds of strikes on U.S. forces and interests right there in the Middle East where we've served.
Yeah, Congressman, I got to get this in here because former UN weapons inspector David Albright recently said something very scary. He said today Iran would need only about a week to produce its first nuclear weapon. It could have enough weapons-grade uranium for 6 weapons in a month, and after 5 months of producing weapons-grade uranium, it could have enough for 12. Is it too late to put the genie back in the bottle at this point? What can be done now to prevent this?
No, strong U.S. leadership has the ability to immediately address this issue. We've got to be able to enforce sanctions. We've got to have a strong military presence, as we've seen most recently from carrier strike groups in the region. But we have to recognize that Iran is the source of the problem, not a secondary effect here. And so if we want to just address the issues in, Hamas and the Houthis, we're not addressing the real source of the problem, and that's making sure the Ayatollah and the folks in Tehran know that they need to stop this immediately, and the United States and our allies are going to hold them accountable in the region.
Well, today is a big day for your state, so we're so happy to talk to you on Iowa Caucus Day. Have you endorsed anybody, and what is your thinking heading into today?
Yeah, so Iowa gets to be the starting line, but America gets to decide who the next commander-in-chief is. And I'm very confident that even though it's, 40 degrees below with the wind chill, that we've got snow drifts. I'm just digging out of my driveway one more time today. So basically, it's a standard Monday in Iowa as we go in to help pick the next commander-in-chief. And Carla, I think it's really important here that we have the opportunity to do what Republicans do well, a ground-up opportunity to pick the next leader of the free world. That means issues that are important in my urban and rural districts get heard by candidates who spent time on the ground really hearing from Iowans versus what the Democrats do of a top-down, we're going to tell you who the nominee is, and you're going to go ahead and vote on them. Well, this is a really important process of people coming together to get to drive their issues.
I hear you have some interesting memories of your grandfather and a lamb on caucus night that explains the true grit of Iowans. Would you like to share that story with us?
So we're a sixth-generation farm family here in Iowa, and like so many farm families, I remember being a kid delivering lambs on a cold caucus night, and my grandfather was about elbow deep in a ewe delivering a lamb, and at 7 o'clock, it's like, hey, we got business to get done. So we expedited the birthing of that lamb and drove 15 miles into town so that he could be at caucus night. And that's really reflective of what Iowa's all about. You get your job done, and then at 7 o'clock, you're there with your neighbors, your friends in the church basement, having a conversation about how do we lead this country.
It's an important process, and that's a story I will never forget. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.